Now, I am a firm believer that when you're going somewhere new, you shouldn't research it to death because that kind of takes some of the surprises out, kind of takes out some of the fun of traveling to a new place. But after being in Thailand for over a year, there are a few things I kind of wish I knew before I got here. So today we are going over my top 12 things that I wish I knew before I came to Thailand. So how you doing, guys? And welcome back to another video. Two things before we get started. One, I'm not gonna go into huge detail on every single one of these points. If I did that, we would be here all day. But if you would like to know more about any of these specifically, feel free to just let me know down in the comments and I will do my best to make a dedicated video or at least go into some more detail on another one. And the second thing, most of these I don't really think are like a game changer in any type of way. I don't think knowing them prior would have changed my mind about coming to Thailand, but there are a couple that I think if you know before coming here, it can definitely improve your quality of life once you are here. That's enough jibber jabber though, let's get right into it. The first one, visas, extensions, that whole realm. Obviously, if you're a foreigner coming to Thailand, that is something you're gonna have to deal with. Now, if you're over the age of 50 and you're looking to live in Thailand, not too big a deal. You're probably more than likely qualified for the retirement visa, which is pretty convenient. You don't gotta do too much. There are a few qualifiers, not that big a deal. Also, if you're just coming on vacation, especially from the West, probably not too big a deal. You're probably visa exempt for 30 days initially and 60 days if you extend that. But if you're under that age of 50 and you're planning to come to Thailand long term, it can be a little bit more difficult. There are ways to make it happen. But honestly, I wish I would have just delved into the realism of visas and extensions and how everything works before I got here. Number two, transportation, motorbikes, trains, buses, just public transportation really. I wish I would have learned a little more how everything worked and how easy it was to actually get around Thailand, even if you don't have a bike. If you are planning on riding bikes, maybe buying one or renting them when you do get here. If you ride them for long enough and you don't have a license or you're not wearing a helmet, eventually you will get stopped. So if you're moving here, it's definitely worth it to just go ahead, get the license, ride with your helmet, be all legit. And especially if you're planning on traveling around Thailand more, learning how and where to get on and off and how much stuff costs, learning where everything goes and how the whole process of public transportation works would be a good idea. Next one, I wish I would have explored a little bit more before picking where I live, whether that meant coming here and doing it or doing it online. At this point, it's just safe to say that I've been surprised by some places. Not that I'm unhappy with where I am, but I wish I would have just spent a little more time looking around before I settled on where exactly I wanted to stay, at least when I first got here. So one that I really underestimated and didn't really learn too much about before I got here was the difficulty, honestly, of making friends with locals. It can be a little bit hard. Obviously, there's a language barrier most of the time. So what might end up happening is you're spending more time with expats. If you're gonna do this, I say just think about if you were at home, would you be hanging out with those same people? It can be easy to get involved in circles that you might not be involved in if you were at home. So I wish I would have done a little bit more research, and it would be good for you to do the same on maybe some hobbies or something like that to help make friends with some locals, especially if you're living here. A big one that I definitely did not understand until I was actually here for a while is if you are a foreigner in Thailand, some things are just gonna be a little bit more difficult for you to get taken care of. And at the same time, some things might be a little bit more expensive. Just the way it works in Thailand, especially when it comes to temples or anywhere like that that charges admission charges. If you are a foreigner, you're probably gonna get charged more. And then when it comes to contracts for banks or even houses, sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult. There's some more hoops to jump through if you are a foreigner. A lot of the time it makes sense, but that's something you should definitely do some research on if you're planning on maybe buying a condo, buying a car, anything like that that would require you to sign a contract if you are a foreigner in Thailand. A really big one that honestly took me almost like a year to learn is the actual convenience of 7-Eleven. Now, of course, you know when it comes to food and things like that, yes, it's a convenience store, you can go in there and get food, but the ease of access when it comes to a bunch of other things, especially like paying bills, you can pay your phone, pretty much any bill you'll have to pay with a QR code, electricity, you can actually get all of that done at 7-Eleven. There's quite a bit. It's a one-stop shop for a lot of things, and that would have saved me a lot of trips and a lot of taxi fares when I first got here. One of the big things on my list when I came to Thailand is I wanted to see some critters and hang out with some animals that might be a little bit harder to do in America. And if you're planning on doing this, I would just recommend doing some research on the places that you're going to before you go there, before you interact. Things can be a lot different in Thailand than they are in a lot of places in the West, so just do some research. If you want to go hang out with elephants, tigers, anything like that, just do a little bit of research and actually look up the place before you go. A huge one for a lot of people, it definitely was for me, and that is setting a realistic budget. Of course, we know there are thousands of videos and blog posts out there talking about how much cheaper it is to live in Thailand, and generally, probably 85% of the time, this is true, but it is not across the board. There are certain things that are the same price, even more expensive than they are in the West, especially if you're coming from America. So really make sure you are setting a realistic budget for yourself. Get to the higher end of it and then even add some money on top of that. I wish I would have done a little bit more research on how much specific things actually cost instead of just deciding, oh, well, everything's cheaper, so I can bring all of my budgets down. Certain things like foods, technology, electronics, things like that, some of them are going to be more expensive, some of them are going to be close to the same price, and some of them are going to be cheaper. Roads and traffic. This is especially true if you're planning on traveling around Thailand some more. If you're like me in America, I love road trips, any excuse to get in the car and cruise down the road. In general, in Thailand, everything is just going to take a lot longer. The roads are smaller, there's more traffic. So 200 kilometers in America and 200 kilometers in Thailand are not the same. So I think it's a good idea to start wrapping your head around that before you get here. I definitely wish I would have started to think about the reality of me getting sick a lot more in Thailand than I do at home. At home in America, I rarely ever get sick, maybe once every couple of years. In Thailand though, it makes sense, different climate than I'm especially used to. There's different microbes, different bugs, different critters, different food. So you're probably gonna get sick a lot more, especially when you first get here. So do some research on ways to avoid this. Obviously, good hydration is the top one, especially when we're talking about one of our next points. But doing some research on the bugs you might deal with when you get here is for sure a good idea.
You'll never feel the way I feel. You don't know if my love is real. Baby, listen to me, here's the deal. When you're not here, I'm not the same. I'm reading a new chapter, babe. Been stuck here in a bed for days.
Perfect segue into our next point, climate. Thailand, it is hot everywhere all the time. I'm sure you've heard this, but minus you coming from a few very specific places in the West, it is probably gonna be much hotter here than you're used to. So especially if you're planning on doing outdoor activities, something to start wrapping your mind around pretty much all times of the year. It does cool off a little bit in the winter, but realistically not that much. So especially if you're doing some national parks, things like that, where you're planning on being outside, and you probably need to drink a lot more water than you used to. And do whatever you can to get some clothing that will help you out. A big one that can be a serious game changer if it's ever been a problem for you, honestly, and that has to do with just the nightlife / drinking culture in Thailand. Realistically, it's just a lot more normal here. A lot more people do it, even from party areas like Pattaya all the way out to rural Thailand. Thai people love to drink beer. So if it's something that you're trying to stay away from, that is one thing to definitely think about. And also if you're planning on staying in a place like Pattaya or even Bangkok, it could be a really good idea to try to have some things set up or do some research on other activities you can do, because a lot of the time when it comes to just hanging out, whether it's expats or Thais really, a lot of the time it centers around booze. 12 things that I wish I would have known before coming to Thailand. If you have any that you would like to share, feel free to drop down in the comments below. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will catch you in the next one.